What's going on, family? Black on Black Education Podcast, another episode here. And as always, we will allow our guest to introduce herself.
Yes, of course. My name is Lovie. I am the founder, co-founder, but now founder of Parenting While Black. I'm a mom of four boys, age 13, 12, 9, and 5. Got their ages right. And I live in the Bronx, and I'm excited to talk with y'all about how I center not only anti-racism in my parenting, but also conscious parenting and how I've been advocating for my children and helping other parents as well with kind of navigating this space as well. So excited to meet y'all and talk with y'all and learn more about y'all and stuff like that.
I love it. I love it. So, I mean, let's kick it off, right? Parenting While Black, beautiful title, like captivates you from the beginning. Was so excited from the moment that we found you. And so, like, describe to people what it is and what your platform does and how it supports our overall mission of moving toward a more anti-racist society.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, my husband and I first created the page about 2 years ago. And it was more so just to kind of like share our experience as a Black family. And also since my family and friends used to always like come to me for like parenting questions and stuff like that, I was like, oh, okay, I'll share it. And then the hubby dipped on me and told me I had to run it by myself, and because he was handling other work and stuff like that. So I started to handle Parenting While Black by myself for about a good year and a half. And for my 9 to 5, what I mostly do is I am a DEI strategist at a wonderful nonprofit that is hoping to end homelessness across the nation. And so I started to merge together how I was strategizing or centering anti-racism in the organization, as well as the normal talks that I have with my boys, but then kind of pivoting it to being really intentional about shaping the Parenting While Black community in that area. So I was like, let me take my expertise as a parent as well as centering anti-racism and equity in all of the work that I do, and let me start to try to share some tips and resources to the community. And so it's begin to flourish. And I'm excited about the way that it's gone. I've started to center a lot on education, and specifically because I am a full believer in advocating for my children to be exposed and have the options to choose like what school they decide to go to based off of like what they excel in best. So we'll probably dig into this a little further, but all of my children go to different schools. One is in boarding school, one is in a um, public school on the Upper West Side that's focused on performing arts. Another one is in another local public school, and another one is in charter school. And it's all shaped on their personalities. Luckily, we have the privilege to be able to kind of like move around and do that. But basically, I just want to ensure that I am supporting my children, making sure that I'm being really intentional about knowing who they are, like what their experience is, having the tools to kind of navigate whether it's microaggressions or how to have racial healing or just being like having imposter syndrome. So just using those tools with them on a day-to-day basis. And then on the other side of it is the education focused area too. So I focus a lot on systems development and processes for navigating the educational system as a parent. So I'll stop there real quick. I know.
Yeah, no, you threw a great pass because we school choice is obviously something that to some people it means one thing and to others it means something else, and
Yeah.
politics gets in the way of having an intelligent and a nuanced conversation about it. And it seems you're one of the perfect people to do so because you have kids kind of spread
Everywhere.
around a number of different types of schools. So I guess at first we want to hear let's make it direct to you. You know what I mean? Like why you made some of the specific choices for your for your boys, and how that those were the right choices in terms of what they're doing currently in each of their schools.
Yeah, great question. You know what? I think it's really about knowing your children and trusting that they will tell you like who they are and what they want and what their likes are. And of course, like my 5-year-old wouldn't be able to kind of tell me, but he has a certain type of personality. So I'll start from him and kind of work my way up. But my 5-year-old, he goes to an incredible charter school, and we were in general looking for charter schools for him as an option because unfortunately the local public schools in the area just don't have the enough resources that we are looking for as a family. And so when it came to charter schools, there's a lot of different options when it comes to charter schools as well. And so there was one school, and I just won't name it, but there was one school that was really, really strict. I wouldn't say strict, but just not our cup of tea, so to speak, to match his personality. And so the school that we went with made sure that they balance academics as well as social and emotional intelligence and well-being, and making sure that they centered like meditating as well as being really intentional about developing him academically as well. And so knowing that my child is someone that he may not do the best in a super strict type of school, we decided not to go with that option, even though he was accepted to it, and we decided to go with the other charter school option. My bonus son, who's the 9-year-old, he's going to a local public school because he actually went to the charter school that we did not like, and we pulled him out of that. And his mom lives not too far from there, so we wanted to make sure that he was at a really good, and it was actually the only good, or not, I want to say good, but the one school that's a local public school that's in our district that has the resources that is needed for his grade, and so we chose that school for him as an option. My my 12-year-old, he goes to a school on the Upper West Side. And again, he is someone that's super artsy and he's free and personable. And he definitely draws outside the lines and everything. And I love it. That's just his personality. And the school is exactly the same way. They actually just closed up that school to only that district for now. But we luckily got in when it was open to districts across. So I was advocating, like, just really, really strong on looking for a school that was centered on theater and centered on kids that were very artistically inclined and personable. And that was the school that we found for him. And then my oldest one, he's just like super studious academic wise. Back in 4th grade, he was accepted to a school called George Jackson Academy on the Lower East Side, which was an all boys private school, need based, incredible school. When I say that, we love the school. And he started there from 4th grade. And we went through that process with him because we knew just really early on, he was someone that read books. He read hundreds and hundreds of books every year. It was something that literally, he wasn't playing video games. He wasn't doing that. He was reading books. And just someone that I knew needed to be challenged academically. And so I always was looking for new opportunities. And it just so happened that I found George Jackson Academy. And we chugged our way all the way down there, started from 4th grade, and he continued there until he graduated last summer. And now he attends an incredible co-ed boarding school in Connecticut, one of the top boarding schools in the nation. And it, again, was another situation where we were like, we know that he is very mature for his age. We know that he has the values and the mindset to be able to navigate these type of spaces, and he has resources to have that. And so we knew that we felt comfortable with letting him choose because he got accepted to local top best public schools, the local top best private schools, Catholic schools, and boarding schools in the nation. And we let him choose what he decided that he wanted to do. And he chose boarding school. He chose that specific school, and we went with it. I trust my children to make the best decisions for themselves because I feel like we are raising them with the tools and the knowledge and the resources and the support to be able to make those decisions for themselves. So yeah, that's how all my children ended up in different schools because we trust who they are. We're raising incredible boys, and if I didn't trust them, then I don't think that I was doing my job right. I guess as a parent for myself, in that case. So yeah.
Yeah. I don't often have moments where my brain goes like, this is what should happen. Like, that's usually my dad. He's usually the ideas guy. But as you were talking, I was just like, well, what if there was some sort of agency, right? Where parents could, because you have an ability, right, to have already known how to do parenting the way that you did it, right?
Yeah.
But we know that a lot of people don't necessarily have that kind of set for them, or they haven't made those decisions in terms of parenting. And so imagine there was a resource center of people who were teaching parents how to get to know their children in that way, so that that becomes and feels like there's more of an option for them, right? Because I think that a lot of what you're talking about is that not only did you having the information allow you to have agency over the choices that you made for your children, like they began to have agency by way of you having it, right? And so I think that like the whole time you were talking, I'm like, what if like kids turn 2 or 3 and they like someone comes to their house and like talks them through, how do you make this choice of what school to send? Like, how cool would that? Or we have personalized shampoo, personalized vitamins. We have personalized everything in 2021. So it's like, when will we be able to click a survey online and be able to personalize how we provide education to our kids and figure out what works best for them? So
Just had
that was a
real
super
proud
dad
papa
moment.
right there. It was a proud papa moment, because I'm like, look at my daughter coming up with good ideas and stuff. No,
I have a lot of good ideas. They're usually just smaller.
that's big. That's big.
I love that. You know, it's something, because for me, I've been, and my family tease me about this all the time, but when I am set on something or I want to learn something, when I say I research the crap out of it. So the moment that I learned the word conscious parenting, and I learned it, I think, when my son, my youngest one, the 5-year-old, was born. I actually kind of got a name to like what it means to kind of like trust your lead with, nurturing your children and centering their thoughts and being really conscious of what they are saying and kind of leading with that. And it just became a thing where I was like, okay, I actually have a name to what it is that I'm doing now. It makes sense. Now I'm going to research everything that I possibly can to figure out how to continue to be as strong of a parent. And then I just so happened to then started to go into the DEI space, because I came from like an operational background, but then I started to go into the DEI and HR space. And then I started to realize how a lot of things kind of like connected together. Like when you want to be really intentional, and not saying that my kids are a company or anything, but just there were really good skills that I was able to learn as being a DEI strategist within my organization, and being able to translate that to parenting. So if I was looking at my organization and I'm looking at the data, quantitative and qualitative, I'm looking at the numbers to see where the disparities are. And that's the same case when it comes to schools. And when it comes to qualitative, you're looking at the voices and gathering the feedback and centering the people at heart to see where those inequities are happening too. And that's where I'm leaning into my children and seeing like what is it that they're experiencing, what is it that they would like to experience, and then merging the two together and figuring out how to develop them even further in that way.
Right.
So I could imagine, like, I would love, that would be an incredible thing to have like a one-stop shop platform, because I've had to actually pull different parenting techniques and support from different programs, books, websites, community, to get to where I'm at right now. So yeah.
I mean, can you give us a little bit of that? Like, just, you've obviously done a fantastic job. Could you give us a little bit of, somebody who is just starting off, like, oh my goodness, I'm frustrated with my, with my local schools, and I want to figure out what other options are there for my students. Could you just, help people navigate that process a little bit?
Yeah. Well, first, follow me on Parenting While Black. That's the
that right there. I wish I had the my camera's buzzer, like boom, boom, boom.
Because when I say not only do I give out like a ton of free resources for parents, even as simple as like, once they've decided on a school, how to create an anti-racist community within the school. Say if you are at a school and you don't have the option of choosing another school, or you found your dream school and you want to build community there and centering anti-racism, I have a ebook on that. I have an ebook on admissions checklist, like what should you actually be looking at step by step to do it. But when it's all said and done, of course, following my page would be something that I think would be super helpful. But there's also I'm trying to think of like what was the easiest thing. There wasn't anything easy. I would say I just did a ton of researching. So the first thing I did was to get a better landscape of the school settings or the landscape of that. So understanding what were the pros and cons of public schools, of the zone schools and different specialized schools, what were the pros and cons of charter schools, what were the pros and cons of private day schools and boarding schools. And then I kind of digged and researched even further to see, okay, started looking at the data of certain things like, okay, what is the graduation rate? What is the suspension rate? And I'm breaking that down by race every single time I'm looking at a data point. So I'm of course, usually it's usually like one data point, but then you have to like dig in even further to try to figure out what the breakdown of demographic is, because I'm raising 4 Black boys. So I want to know how children that look like them experience this type of school setting. And
Right.
so once I understood the landscape of each of the schools, I started to kind of break down and kind of see, again, looking at the data. I was looking at what type of programs and resources they had. I was looking at even the teacher demographics to see if there were any Black or brown teachers that were at those schools. I was looking to see if they had any type of anti-racist or DEI action plans within their schools. So it all varied. And I would just say it was just a ton crap of research that I was doing to kind of just get me to a place where I was like, okay, we know what type of personalities that our children have. We know the options there are with the schools. And when it came to boarding schools too, there was this really 2 great websites. I think it was called College Confidential, where it was like a forum that focuses on college school as well, but a lot of forums or subforums they had were on boarding schools and the experience that children had there. So I looked at that, and there was also a boardingschoolreview.com website where there were like over 400 boarding school options, and I kind of literally went down the list of every single school to kind of get a sense of the options that I had available. I'm like that detailed when it comes to schools. And then that's when I started to decide and narrow in on like, okay, we know at least a sense of the direction we want to go in, and let's go there. With my bonus child, it just so happened when his mom and his father pulled him um, out of the charter school, we had to figure out a solution for him because it was in the middle of the school year. So we had to figure out a solution. And it just so happened that there was 2 slots left open for the one school in the district that we were really hearing rave reviews about. And we lucked up and was able to get him into that school. Otherwise, I'm sure we would have probably figured out like trying to choose like a Kappa school option into the next school year when he could apply for another school that we were interested in. But it lucked up, and that was perfect. So
I'm sorry, I just got to ask one question. It's bonus child. I never heard that phrase before.
stepson, but I say bonus. Yeah. I'm bonus mom. He's my bonus son.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I
So yeah, I think it's really about research. I would highly recommend people just to go to my page if they want easy, digestible information. I even give admissions tips in terms of like when you're navigating the process, what type of essays do you want to write? What are like some interview like recommendations to kind of navigate that process, because when it comes to applying to independent schools, it's super competitive. Like you're competing with other kids. A lot of kids also have educational consultants or coaches, and they have, they come from wealth, and so they have a lot of additional resources to be able to navigate that process. And some people don't, like, that's just not the case. So what are some tools and some best practices that you can implement as a family that's cheap or low cost or free, that you're able to still have that option as a school to apply to. So I'm just all about exposure. I'm all about education and having the knowledge and the resources to be able to do it. Let me be the resource, I guess, is the thing that I'll say.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eva?
Oh, so I was like, are you going? No. Okay. I mean, in everything that you're saying, there's just a commitment to empowering parents and families, right? And so understanding that families come in all different shapes and sizes. What are the ways that you have seen, or in your communication with folks who work with you, have you seen the system disempowering parents and disempowering students? And in what ways can we scale the work that you're doing to give some of that power back?
Yeah, I think it's really, really intimidating to go into a new space, like trying to say apply for an independent day school or boarding school, and maybe just not have the slightest clue on where to start. Or maybe you would think like, oh, well, maybe I don't speak well enough for the interview, for the admissions person, so they may think of me another way, or something like that. And so I wouldn't say I've seen firsthand ways that families have been disempowered, but I've seen firsthand how parents could kind of like trick themselves into not even wanting to go through a process because they feel intimidated by a process.
Right.
And I always kind of refer back to like the basics of, in order for you to feel confident in navigating any type of process, you need to be able to practice, right? And know what you're doing, but also have the skills and the resources and the tools to be able to do that. So when it comes to disempowerment, I think it has more to do with the, and I'm sure I'll back up and say I am 100% sure that there's inequities that are happening in the like, we know that this is just a standard in the case when it's all said and done. And but I don't think that should deter a family from going through this process and advocating for your child to be in whatever school that they want to be in. You're the one that's choosing the school, and the school should be and needs to be happy, because when it's all said and done, most of these schools outside of the local public zone schools are like predominantly white institutes that are these private day schools and boarding schools. And so, they're always looking for diversity, right? So that's always the key, right? But when it's all said and done, your kid is the one that's special, right? Your kid is the one that is bringing a unique skill set and personality and mindset to the school and diversity to the school. And so I think as long as I keep on like just guiding parents back to that, like, your child is the prize. As long as we have the education and the resources and access to be able to do this, let's do it. And I think a sense of imposter syndrome, again, kind of like leaks in at times, where it's like, oh, maybe we don't deserve this. No, we deserve everything that we want to have. We are incredible people, and I think that is the main thing. So just focusing on building confidence into families. And it can be just as simple as like, what is your fear? Okay, now let's tackle that fear. Is it that you do not understand, or is it that you've never gone through this process before? Is it that you don't understand the options that's available to you? It could be something as simple like, I don't know um, if the essay that my child wrote is clear enough or is grammatically correct. Do you need me to look at it and review it and give, have an additional set of eyes on it? Because with my child, luckily we went through this program. Um, we went through two programs. We actually applied for ABC, A Better Chance. We also applied for Oliver Scholars, and they're basically prep programs to get you into the high schools that you want to get into. And he got into both schools, but we chose Oliver Scholars because they were just a little more smaller, and they would follow him throughout college. So they would actually pay for all of his college applications and his interviews, as well as they paid for all of his high school applications and interviews. But um, Oliver Scholars, they reviewed his essay. I reviewed his essay. His school reviewed his essay. If I needed to, I could have sent it to, whether it was like a friend or a coworker or something. Like, we have to lean on the resources that we have and access to people that we have. But if I didn't feel comfortable and confident in thinking that he put his best foot forward with submitting an essay, then I would have to lean on other people and ask for help in that capacity. So just asking for help when you're feeling like, like you're not confident in the process and even how to move forward. I think it just has a lot to do with putting I wouldn't even say pride, but just putting to the side and saying, hey, I need help. Can you help me?
Right. Right.
What can you do to help me figure out the situation? And I feel like, at least in my community, my Parents-in-Law Black community, there's always someone that is willing to help and support in any way. So yeah.
It's something I love to hear. You know what I mean? I'm always thinking along the lines of the fact that, whether it's parents, whether it's students, whether it's, all of us, it's the idea that collaboration is better than like the competition. And it
That's
does seem that in some of these systems now, particularly charter schools and things like that, it creates like this competition.
yeah.
And and you have parents like yourself who you have the time and wherewithal or energy, you know what I mean, and passion to really advocate for your child, to make sure that they're in the in the best situation possible. And I don't see how anybody could ever begrudge somebody for doing that. There is a concept that often comes up that I think about, and it kept popping into my mind as you were talking. The idea of like bright flight. So when the brightest kids kind of get taken from the local districts, and then they wind up in a charter school over here, or they wind up at a prep school over there. There's I don't know, some sense that they're leaving the community, or things to that effect, and it's again 100%
I get it. Yeah.
understandable. But I'm curious how you think about that, how you wrestle with that.
Yeah. So my kids are and will always be my number one priority. Um, I and that's all that it honestly boils down to. I definitely am aware and think that there is a lack of resources and support in our public schools. It is noticeable, and is detrimental to our kids as well. And so I think that on one end there needs to be parents and public figures and organizations that is advocating to offset that and to ensure that all of our children are having an equitable and challenging academic experience, as well as supporting their emotional and social well-being, and supporting them outside of the school section, because once you leave school, you have to go home, and people have different home settings and so forth. I think that absolutely needs to happen. I also know that um, I want to ensure that my kids, based off of their personalities and the expectations we have for them, are in the best setting for them. And so, if it just so happens that the local school that is near us does not have the resources that they need to thrive to the best of their ability, then I'm not choosing that school. So, I am someone that is definitely pro choice. I am also someone that understands my privilege. I know that I am college educated. I know that I'm someone that know how to navigate certain type of systems and rub certain type of elbows. I am someone that knows that I work from home. I have a fully remote job, and I have the flexibility to be able to even work in the morning or work at night and spend time researching different school options and programs for my children. I was just last week when I went to visit my son at his school, we were already looking at STEM programs down in Georgia, because we're moving to Georgia next year. And so we were looking at STEM programs at like Morehouse College that he could potentially apply to for his, like, going into 10th grade for summer, and then finding a football coach for him to experience that during the summertime. I'm doing that now.
Yeah.
And I
Right.
know that I'm sure, and I know that a lot of parents do not have that type of privilege. And so that's why that's why I have the Parenting-While Black community, is so that way I'm able to share the resources and the knowledge that I have, because I'm not an elitist. I don't think that we should be hovering power, we should be hovering knowledge. No, all of
Yeah.
our children deserve to be wherever they choose to be.
Right.
But that's it. So that's where I land with that question.
Yeah. And I think that like it's also us continuing to have that conversation about it. It is not, the path forward doesn't mean that going out and coming back in doesn't matter, right? Like I know we've talked about off the podcast, the reality that there's a commitment to our community that we have, right? And so I feel confident in saying that commitment to community is something that's a part of your parenting practice with your
Yes,
children. And so
for sure.
they know where they're from, they know who they are, they know what they believe in, and we have to believe that our children, when we give them the best possible opportunities, they're going to be the folks who make the changes that we want to see
Yes.
eventually, right? And so
Yeah.
I think like 100% what you're saying is super true, as long as when those students do go out, that they go out with an understanding of what their passion and purpose is as it relates to the collective commitment to the path forward. And when you talk about conscious parenting, I mean, I'm again, I'm not in on the parenting sessions, but I feel really confident in saying,
You got a doggy.
I'm only kind of a parent. My dog, I'm not having conscious conversations with him. So I'm a fake parent, but I'm not in on the parenting conversations yet. But I think like it'll be extraordinarily important to me when I'm a parent that there is that connection to, they know who they are, they know whose they are, and they know how the impact that they make and the choices that they make reflect our community and the community that we want to create for ourselves, right? And historically understand the legacies on which we are the that we're just, oh my gosh, I can't think of the word, but that we're standing on, right? Like we're we are our ancestors' wildest dreams. And so it's extraordinarily important that we don't forget about the things that they worked for and that they fought for. And I think it just brings me into kind of looking forward, right? So for you, I'm sure everything about every single one of your children's schools isn't the best thing in the entire world and you love it. So if we're looking at the education system at large, and you have a beautiful way of looking at it, both as a parent, but also in 4 different arenas, talk to us a little bit about that, and like what are you seeing in the education system that you really want to see a concerted effort toward changing and addressing?
Yeah, great question. I think, and so I'll lean more to the private and independent schools first, because, and I'll talk to the charter schools and public schools next. But I think the thing that I really want to see, and I know that this is difficult, and it's across the board in any type of sector that you're in, but I tend to see a lot of performative work or like easy things to accomplish. So it's like,
Mhm.
oh, we have a new DEI strategy in the school. Check this out. Or, oh, we have a new DEI leader in the school. We're centering anti-racism. We like, the job is done. And so I think that what I'd like to see is transformational type of work.
Mm.
Um, and that has a lot to do with really getting uncomfortable and really honing in on like what are the true inequities that are happening within these schools, and then what are we going to do starting from the not only the leadership, of course, the leadership that they need to be bought in, and they're the ones that's kind of like the North Star to kind of help to make sure that the work move forward, but also what type of tools and like resources can we provide for the students that are there so that they're able to advocate for themselves and bring transformational change within the school community. And so
Mhm.
I see this, or I see actually in the private school, independent day school community, them talking interestingly about race more than I do in the charter schools and public schools. And it's an interesting dynamic because the charter school and public schools that I know and I'm connected to are mostly Black and brown students and teachers and leadership, whereas the private and day and boarding schools are mostly PWI. And so I wonder, I just don't know where to land with that. But the thing that I would love to see is just transformational work and just getting really uncomfortable with progressing and centering anti-racism and that has to do with advocating for the students, and ensuring that they have the voice to be able to seek change and advocate for change, and of course embedding that into all the school policies and infrastructures. So that includes, of course, heavily training leadership and teachers in that aspect. But I think there's also like a change management process that has to happen as well. So once you've gone through these set of trainings or so forth, like what are we actually going to do with it, and how are we going to actually implement that or embed that into the school culture? And I know it takes time, and I do know that there is no like end goal in sight. It's always just a journey. Some schools are further along than others.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see the progress that happens, especially in the schools like my oldest son attends. Now, when it comes to the charter and public schools that my children attend, I'm not sure. It's interesting because it's the same thing. I definitely want to see transformative work as well, but I don't even see the conversation happening a lot of times unless I'm bringing it up, or some parents are bringing it up, and we're like, for my second oldest son that attends a school, which is actually it's a mostly white school as well on the Upper West Side. But we created an anti-racist parent committee as well, and we're helping to like move work forward there. But I don't know. It's interesting. I would love to see transformational work. I would love to see buy-in from not only leadership, but also a way to support children and kind of learning what their voice is and what their stance is, and having the historical context to be able to kind of have these conversations, no matter how uncomfortable they are, and the schools and the skills that they would need to have these conversations, whether it was inside of the school, the classroom, or outside of it. Do I think that they'd get there? Who knows? I'm not sure.
It's, I mean, I think a lot of the things that you talked about, they're just happening in small, kind of
Yeah,
pockets and small places. And I'm able to get inspired when I see or I hear about them. And then outside of that, I'm like depressed, like, oh my God, we have so much freaking
so
work,
much work to do.
and so many angles to move from, like, where do I start? And so it is a tough, tall, order. But I again, I'm heartened with conversations like this. I'm heartened with people who, like yourself, who you keep doing it, you know what I mean, on a day-to-day basis. And the reality is even, I'm sure you're going to touch way more than this, but if you touch 5, 10 parents, and this is in your life,
Yes.
where their kids wind up, at a school that's empowering for them, and winds up, they were just not interested in school and not interested in learning, and they make a shift as a result of the things that you've done. Then no matter how much time you spent on it, it ultimately becomes worth it, because who knows what those kids go out and sprinkle into the world. Like,
Yes.
it's you know if you can do it 100 times instead of 10, then we move faster. But if you just do 10, it's progress. And we have to be able to take a picture of that progress in our heads and our hearts, and celebrate it when it happens, so that we can get more of it. And so, just again, salute,
I
salute,
love,
salute.
thank you, thank you. I love that. It reminds me, because I say this often, and I'm like, I feel like I'm just planting seeds, right? And I'm
Mm.
planting seeds, and I'm continuing to water it, but I need the parents to also water it too. And eventually I start to see it bloom.
Yep.
And sometimes it takes longer than others, but I'm like, I don't even care if I see one family like 5 years from now come to me, or I just see that their child has graduated, or just they are in their own lane and succeeding at whatever they are choosing to reach, I my goal is complete. That's all that I'm really looking for. I know, yeah, I just want to spread as much as I can, and I'm just trying to plant some seeds and seeing where it will grow, and hoping for the best.
Parenting while black is gonna be one of those machines that tills up a whole bunch of the ground and drops a whole bunch of seeds back there,
I hope
and
so.
all of a sudden, you got the whole forest, growing as a result. I believe.
A
I hope
hundred
so.
percent, 100%. And I think, again, as somebody who's not a parent yet, as somebody who interacts and engages with a lot of parents, It's so refreshing to see that there are people who believe enough in the coalition of parents that are Black parents to not give up on their ability to create change.
Yeah.
I say that because I have had the amount of people just in my family who've been like, "How are the parents?" Like oh, like that's one of the first. Well, we have the parents are the problem, right? And I'm like, no.
Stop imitating my family.
Almost almost every single interaction I've had with a parent has been positive. Almost every single one, and the times where it's been negative, it has been off the back of like, well, this teacher just called me and told me my child was failing, and now blah, blah, blah. And so that I'm the next person that they hear and they ready to spit fire.
Yeah.
Right. So I've never had a negative interaction with a parent who just simply did not care to know what was going on with their child. And so when somebody says, you know what, in my free time, in my available time, I'm going to create resources, I'm going to create opportunities for people to be able to be empowered in a way that I don't think the system does for them very much. It means you believe in this group of people. You believe in the future of education. You believe that when people know better, they do better. And it's a thank you for that, because so oftentimes people will get stuck in this is what it is. These are the experiences I've had. These are the experiences I've heard, and never done the reflection of like, well, what was on the receiving end of the call that ended up with you getting cussed out by a parent.
Yeah, I am a firm believer in that there are systems in place and people react to them. And that's all that there is. And I was able to this is something I go back to. I was able to connect it to the work that I do. And I realized that when it came to the homeless sector, that there were systems in place that the result ended up being a ton of homeless people that are out there. And then once I started to see it in each of the systems, the educational system, even when it comes to people trying real estate and trying to, or small businesses, like I'm like, it's crazy the way that the system is set up, and we are responding to them, or we're navigating them in a certain type of way. And so I am always a firm believer that thinks we have this system that we are fighting against, right? So my job, I know that I'm someone that is not writing policy to change educational policy. That is not my lane of work. There is experts that's doing that, and I hope that they are succeeding in doing that. There are teachers that are doing transformational work, such as you know, and I praise y'all because I could never be a teacher, but that is the work that you are doing. That's the lane, and you're succeeding in that. And my role,
just Eva, let me.
My role is to be a parent advocate. My role is to provide resources. My role is to provide access and exposure to the different schools and just opportunities that you have. And even if we're not looking at schools and taking a step back and just looking at conscious parenting, I'm sure some of my family looking at me like, what? You don't hit your kids? You don't cuss them out? You don't do none of that? No, I don't. Like, this is the lane that I'm going, and I'm just trying to spread the wealth and spread the resources. And of course, it's up to you to take that, like, take it in and receive it. I'm always here to provide it when needed.
Right. Yeah, I love it.
Can you talk a little bit? Well, it just popped in my head. Like, are you on a PTA, or any thoughts on a PTA and how?
I don't do that. Oh man,
just,
right
I'm
now.
thinking that I feel like some of the stuff that you're doing should also be happening at the PTA level.
Yeah, I agree. So I am not a part of the PTA, and that's only because it's just a lot. But but what I am doing is, again, for one of my children's school, I am actually the lead of the it's a racial justice school committee lead, and they partner directly with the PTA. And so it's not the PTA, but I work directly with the PTA, like centering and recommending racial justice initiatives and strategies and events for the school. And so I do think, but I think that the problem for me saying, hey, join a PTA, a lot of people don't have the capacity to do that. And so that is definitely an option. I definitely think, as many parents that are like us, that have also the time and the capacity to do that, I completely recommend for them to be able to do that. But I think it really just starts with just yourself and at home, right? Like, what within your capacity are you able to do? You work all day, okay, that's totally fine. What are possibly some books that you can recommend to your child, or maybe you, so that they can learn by themselves and read by themselves, just some racial justice initiatives and skills and resources? Or what is a
Yeah.
skill, what is a school or website that they can look at to look at different schools that they may be interested in? So whatever's within your capacity as a parent is what I recommend for you. Yes, of course, if you could join the PTA, or create your own anti-racist or racial justice school committee, or partner with families to kind of advocate or probably teach each other, maybe do a book club. There's like a bunch of different things that you
Yeah.
do, but I I I know that our community is not struggling, but we are all just trying to survive, right? And some of us are in a space where we have the space to do that, and some of us to do more, and some of us don't. So I say do what is within your capacity, and it could be the smallest, like tiniest thing. And I
Yeah.
think as long as we focus on that small thing and continue to develop it and nurture it. It could be something as simple as doing a daily affirmation for your child, waking up and saying, "You're beautiful. You're an intelligent. I love your brown skin. I love your kinky hair. I love that you love to read books." Like, it could be as simple as an affirmation, but just doing what you can within the parameters of the time that you have.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that key piece about like, even if it's 5 other parents that you know, and so when there's a PTA meeting, I can't make it, you can't make it, you can't make it, but you made it, and these are the 5 things that they talked about, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so just creating community that allows you, in just like you said, in the capacity that you have, to understand what's going on at the school, and the ways and the things that you need to have on your radar for your child,
Yeah.
and also for other people's children, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that so much of what we talked about today was about providing agency to parents by uh, not overwhelming them with, this is what you have to do in order for your kid to be successful. This is what you have to. This is, you can't. How could you not have a college counselor in 8th grade? Like, how are you not? That's not helpful to people who are not in a position to do that, right? But what is helpful is giving them options, giving them agency, and allowing them to talk about the things that they need, and that would support their child. So
Yeah.
I definitely am ready to walk into the classroom and think about parent engagement, which is something that's extraordinarily important to me, and family engagement, in a new light, and the ways that I can share your work and the work of other people that might then support what eventually happens with a lot of people's kids. So I'm definitely excited, and I want people to be able to connect with you. So please let them know where they can reach you, where they can talk to you. Not everybody's watching this, so just shout out your Instagram, any other spaces that they should be tapping in with you on.
Yeah, I think my Instagram is the one-stop shop. So parenting while BLK on Instagram. Of course, it's the same thing for Facebook as well. But I also have a link there to my website, which is parentingwhilebok.com, which has links to either like the admissions workbook and ebook that I was talking about that I use, or there's a free admissions checklist, there's a free anti-racist interview guide, there's a free 5 steps to creating an anti-racist school committee. But even just following the posts that I have, and you would gain a ton of knowledge there as well. I open up my DMs, reach out to me there as well. I'm I'm not at the level yet where well, I will never be at the level where I'm untouchable. I'm just black at that, but I respond to my DMs. And yeah, you could also send me an email, parentingwhileblk at gmail.com. I will respond as soon as possible. But I'm here to share. I'm here to build community. My community has been growing and growing, and I look forward to more of you joining in and growing with me.
I love
Absolutely,
it.
absolutely. So, what we always do as our way to close out is we give our guest an opportunity to become the interviewer, and ask Eva and/or I a question.
Yeah, I would love to just know, like, what is the future for Black on Black education, and what are some either like cool initiatives or events that y'all hope to have in 2022?
You want me to answer?
It's up to you.
This is one of our last episodes of the year, so really cool things coming out in 2022. But we have made a pivot lately. And I think that we've basically, up until now, really just been trying to figure out ways to engage with educators about their work in the classroom. And I think we're making a transition now to really focus on the needs of the students, really, really authentically, right? Like, what is it that we can get from students? So we officially have our 501c3. We are a nonprofit organization. And so as such, we plan to kind of create a series of focus groups for parents, for students, for other interested parties, education consultants, folks who are working in and around the education system, and folks who are dealing with the ramifications of the education system, and what are the things that you want in order to create a system that makes sense so that we can provide direct service to students with supplemental education and education experiences and eventually learning spaces that serve the needs of students, as particularly students in the greater New York area, particularly students of color that are from low-income communities, those students that are consistently marginalized from a quality education without having tips, tricks, tools, and all these other things, like just by virtue of walking on the planet, have been marginalized because of what they look like and their socioeconomic status. And so we are just about tired of that, and really want to think about what it could look like by taking the voices of the people that schools impact and using that to create a path forward in education.
Wow. That was a good question I asked. That's incredible.
I can't do any better. I can't do any better. I was just about to tell you, like, me and you just fist bump, because I know you're proud of your kids, and it's like, boom, me too.
There we go. That's
I'm just here to serve. Well, that was another episode of the Black on Black Education Podcast. So I am grateful for you, Lovie. Thank you for sharing your time with us. And for those of y'all who are listening, we will see you next year. No, maybe next week. Probably next week.